All right, everybody. This is a little tutorial on evolution. And for students in my class at Central, although we're not really exactly into the evolution strand yet, we will be soon. And all of this stuff really ties together. I mean, we're doing diversity of living things. I mean, that connects with evolution. Of course it does. Everything does, really. And so because I've been away and I'm sick, I wanted to make this tutorial for you so that you weren't just doing textbook stuff. So I'm hoping that the supply teacher has given you the worksheet here that I'm displaying right now, Emergence of Evolutionary Thought. And if you do have that, as you should, I'm going to go through a little slideshow and we'll fill in the missing information and I'll say a few words about each part of this. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so Emergence of Evolutionary Thought using the worksheet. Now, I'm going to post this video, of course, on YouTube. It may not make a lot of sense to any of my other viewers on YouTube. It may make more sense to my students. But if you do happen to be seeing this, I will try to also provide the PDF worksheet for other teachers, other students, if you want to use it. All right? So here we go with evolution. The great chain of being. So here we have an image of Aristotle around 300 BC over here. Okay. And you're just going to fill in these red underlined words on your worksheet as we go through this. All right. So Aristotle was one of the first great naturalists. Okay. These are people that are looking at the natural world and categorizing, trying to make sense of the world around them. He categorized living things that he encountered, and he felt that all organisms fit into an orderly scheme. So people are looking around them, trying to make sense of what they see. Now, I mean, think back to what you've learned so far in the diversity strand, the kingdom, phylum, class. All that stuff really stemmed from this early research. And, you know, sure, they didn't have microscopes, so they couldn't really see, certainly not bacteria or viruses or protists, you know. But then, you know, as you start to move up, basically looking at animals and plants, all right, that's what they're doing, and trying to make sense of the world. So, in time, the ancient view of gradual levels of organization, going from non-living matter to the most complex organisms, were formalized into something called the Scala Naturae, the ladder of nature, all right, also called the great chain of being. And in this image down here, you can see Aristotle's Scala Naturae, all right, going from non-being, sort of inanimate objects, up to minerals, plants, animals, and then humans. Now, interestingly, note that he had demons and angels and God also in the chain. Okay? So the ladder stood on non-living matter, so we have non-living matter down here, and it descended rung by rung from minerals to plants, through animals to human beings, and then upwards to demons, angels, and finally to God. Each species, each sort of organism at the time, had its fixed place in the divine order and was unchanged since creation. So, you know, these are spiritual, philosophical, religious people that felt that God created everything exactly how he or she wanted it to be at the beginning of time, or the beginning of creation, the beginning of life, and everything was created all at the same time. So humans and dinosaurs and archaebacteria all were created all at that time and haven't changed. In other words, there was no evolution. All right. Okay. So there's that first section. Let's move on. This is another image of the great chain of being. And I don't know how much of this you can make out, but we've got some plants down here. We've got some animals all throughout here, and humans, and then we go up into various spiritual kind of beings and God up at the very top type thing. Okay? So very interesting spooky kind of stuff. Then along comes Carl Linnaeus and binomial nomenclature, and you've already heard about that in the diversity strand. Linnaeus is considered the father of modern taxonomy, and he used a method of classifying organisms that's still used today. He was the first to place humans into an order, so there's that taxon, the order called Primates. We are primates, but it's pronounced Primates, which included the apes, and he went on to place humans into the genus Homo and the species Sapiens. All right, so that's where we got that from, binomial nomenclature. Linnaeus still believed that God created all things, and he even classified non-living matter. All right, so we don't have to go through all this, but just notice we've got Homo and Sapiens down here. All right, genus and species. We've got the primates as the order, and Mammalia. And there are other taxonomical groups and names that we haven't talked about, but some of them should look familiar. Chordata, Hominidae, that kind of thing. Okay, so now we get into the concept of evolution. And I just want to say right from the outset here that teachers like me that are introducing this stuff are just messengers. We were not there at the beginning of time. Most of us haven't done the research. So, you can take our word for it or not. Really, the idea is for you to be exposed to things, make your own decisions. But I mean, make your decisions based on facts, on research, on theory. And when we talk about theory in science, we're not talking just about a postulate, just someone makes something up and says, I have a theory. We're talking about scientific research that leads to theories which are somewhat just short of scientific laws. Okay, so here's the thing, and like I say, I'm a little bit sick, so I may not be able to explain this as convincingly as I would if I had my wits a little bit more about me, but biogeography refers to different living organisms in different parts of the world. I mean, think of it this way. If all living things were created at the same time in the world, then why over time do different organisms like this giant armadillo, this anteater, why do these different organisms exist only in these particular habitats? Okay, if everything was created at the same time, why would they exist in different spots? All right, so okay, let's go on with the text and we'll see what I come up with. When global voyages of the 16th century revealed unusual species that was not known in Europe, people began to question, where do all these species fit in the scala naturae? I mean, it's one thing if you're stuck in your one part of the world and you start deciding how everything was created, and then you start going out to other parts of the world and saying, like, for example, I'm from Canada here. This is where I'm recording this. Before I had ever been to Florida, I didn't really, understand the vegetation there and the animals there. I just know what's happening here in Winterland, Canada. And then you go down to Florida and you find there's different types of plants there. Okay, there's different animals there. And then when I met my wife, Deanie, over in Indonesia, I go over there, it's completely different. We don't have banana trees here. But why not? If everything was created at the same time in the same place, all spread out, why is it that there are different organisms living in different parts of the world? Could it be, I'm just postulating this question, could it be that organisms survive differently in different environments? So that, palm trees, you don't see those in London, Ontario, where I'm from. Why? Because they just don't survive well. They survive down in Florida. And there's going to be some, desert plants, all right, cactus. I can't walk down to Masonville Mall around the corner here and other than buying a little cactus in a thing. They don't grow in Victoria Park here in Canada. And so it makes sense, if you believe that these organisms, these living things, require certain conditions to survive. And that's why they survive over there rather than over here. And this is called biogeography. This is just one little small piece of questions and eventual sort of evidence for evolution. This doesn't tell you how evolution necessarily occurred. This is just one thing that starts to call into question the idea of everything being created at one time in the same place and not having changed. So let's go on. You probably already read this, but I was rambling. Furthermore, if all species have been created at the same time and place, why were certain species found in only some parts of the world but not others? How did they cross oceans and great mountain ranges to end up where they were? Another interesting thing is this thing here. This is called the glyptodont. Glyptodont. All right? And comparing this to the modern armadillo, all right, this is extinct, doesn't exist anymore. This one does exist. They're very similar, but they have some differences. If they're so similar, why wouldn't they both be here today? Or why wouldn't this one be here today? Why do organisms go extinct? If they're created and they're so perfect, you know? Could it be that over time, this organism may have changed or evolved into the modern day armadillo, which is so similar? Modern day armadillo being more adaptive to today's kind of world, and this one couldn't survive for whatever reasons like that, and it changed over time into the glyptodon, into the armadillo. Again, this is just some little pieces of the puzzle, one little tiny piece, which started people questioning. All right, this is why people started to get interested in evolution. It's not just because they sat around and said, you know, I don't like the religious concepts. They want to know. They want to know. This is what science does. It probes. It wants to know the answers, and it's not biased. I mean, there's a lot of biased people, but the best way that science can be done is objective. I want to know the answer, whether it's good or bad. You know, is there life out there in the universe or not? Let's find out. We're not going to make it up. That'd be ridiculous. That's not how science would work. It wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be honest. And that's not to say that there's not a lot of dishonest people in the world, all right? But real science wants real answers. All right, let's go on. Questions from comparative anatomy. Another little piece in the puzzle. So, write down comparative anatomy. Studies of the anatomy of seemingly unrelated animals led to questions of why certain structures should be so similar. All right, they seem to be unrelated. All right, well, they are related somehow. We'll talk about that. Why are they so similar, some of their structures? For example, the wing of the bird or bat, the flipper of the whale, and the arm of a human. Now, I think you must admit that a bird and a whale and a human are different, right? Okay, well, let's have a look at these pictures here. Now, I don't have all of the exact same examples, but we've got a human down here. Here's the cat, here's the whale, and here's the bat, all right? The outline of the limb is in blue, and the similar bone structures are in the same color, all right? Now, what they're saying here is that these bones develop in the same kind of a way or in the same kind of embryology, but they are modified for a particular use. So, for example, this is the typical human hand with the opposable thumb, which we could say is used for grasping, let's say. The cat's limb, which has the same kind of bones, is used for, let's say, walking. The whale limb, same kind of bones, but is used for swimming. The bat wing, same kind of bones again, but is used for flying. Now, what this is saying, this is comparative anatomy, looking for similarities in the anatomy of different organisms. What this is saying is that these limb bones, which are similar in all these organisms, are modified for the particular environment that the organism survives in, or what they use them for. We have DNA in our cells, right? We have genetic information, and that's why I have hands like this. My genetic code says build human hands. The genetic code of this cat says build walking limbs, build something to swim with, build something to fly with. But we have similar genetic material, and therefore we build similar structures. Different, admittedly, just like you and I are different. We're both Homo sapiens. We have 99 point whatever percent the same DNA, but we're still a little bit different. But I mean, by far and large, we're very, very similar as human beings. But if you compare the cat or the whale or the bat, they're similar too to us. They have similar genetic material, and that's why they have similar structures, albeit modified. All right? Well, I mean, we're going to talk about DNA evidence soon. That's some of the most powerful evidence for evolution. I don't think you would deny that if somebody did a DNA test, okay, let's say you went into the doctor one day and the doctor says, I've got some news for you. I've got some genetic information here. And someone walked in the door that you'd never seen before. And he said, according to the DNA evidence right here, the DNA fingerprint or whatever, this is your brother. This is your biological brother or your biological sister, according to the DNA. Now, you may not like that. You may not agree with it. All right. But you can't refute it, and you would eventually agree. Like if you were given up for adoption, and eventually they did a DNA test and they found your birth parents. You would go, all right, I found my parents. It's DNA evidence. So if you knew that the DNA evidence links you to that brother or those parents, wouldn't that DNA evidence also link you to that bat, to that whale, to the cat? And if it did, what does that mean? It means we're related, right? We share genetic material. Evolution, essentially. Okay? So that's what the idea of comparative anatomy is. And we'll, of course, talk more about that in class, or if you're just watching this as another student, I'm sure your teacher will go through it more. Here's another interesting one. Again, these are all just little pieces of the puzzle. I'm not saying just because of comparative anatomy, you should, oh, I believe in evolution. Fine, you believe what you want to believe. I'm just the messenger. I'm just telling you what is out there so that you can make an informed opinion or read more about it and not be, sucked into some kind of philosophy that has no evidence for you, all right? That has no proof. We always talk about proof, like there's no proof for this. Are you kidding me? There's no proof for anything. No proof you're going to be alive tomorrow. I hope you are, all right? So be careful with that. I'm not saying, well, it's the same that, I believe by faith, I'm going to believe in this. And so isn't my faith in something else, some supernatural thing? It's just all faith. This is scientific evidence. It's like cancer medicine. This is the best we have right now to treat your cancer. If you want to go and meditate, by all means do that. But understand that you need surgery and chemotherapy, and that's your best shot. All right? And that's what I'm talking about here. All right? I'm not trying to convince you. It might sound like I am. You can do whatever you want. You can believe whatever you want. Just have an informed belief. All right? And don't start poking holes and saying stuff like, well, they haven't found the missing link. What do you know about the missing link? Do you know what that is? So be careful what you believe in, and what other people try to convince you to believe in. You have a mind of your own. All right. So, sorry about that. Vestigial structures. Here's another important one. Here's another piece of the puzzle. Vestigial structures are structures that have been around for a long time in organisms, and they have lost their function because they're not needed anymore for whatever reason, but they still exist, and there's a bunch of them. For example, leg bones in snakes. So here you go. You look at a snake skeleton and you find these bones. Snakes don't have legs, all right? So why are they there? Why would there be bones, primitive leg bones, in snakes? Pelvic girdle, okay? Well, I mean, these are cetaceans, these whales. They're mammals. They were on land and they went back into the water. That's evolution right there, okay? Whether you believe that or not. Primitive pelvis kind of bone, okay? Hip bone, whatever. Why is it there? Could it be that these creatures used it millions of years ago? I don't know how long it was, a million years ago, all right? and eventually went back into the water and said, you know what, I really don't need legs. It's not like they chopped their legs off in one generation, just over time. I'll talk more about how something like that could happen, all right? You probably can't imagine how this could happen, but okay. But over time, they lost it, but they still have this. It's called a vestigial structure. It stays around even though there is no current use for that. How do you explain the presence of that structure? Again, this is a small piece of the puzzle. It makes sense in the construct of evolution. It makes sense. We can explain why that thing would be there. Otherwise, you can't. You just go, well, it was created like that. That whale had that hip bone inserted in there just because. But you know what? Most physiological processes, chemical structures, don't exist for no purpose at all. All right? It's wasteful in terms of resources. And remember, we're humans, right? We can go to the grocery store, we can grow our food, we can build stuff. But in the real animal and plant kingdom, it's brutal. It's survival. Food, mates, shelter is critical for survival and propagating the species. So to waste body resources to produce something that isn't going to do something is wasteful. Now, but it's still there, though. You might be saying, well, so why does the whale keep making that if it's wasteful? In time, perhaps it will be gone. We're going to talk about it more, but I mean, it's encoded in the genetic material. Let me go on and explain a little bit more of this. The tailbone in humans, all right? Now, let me show you something on the next page. Let me show you something. Okay. This is an image of the tailbone in humans. I know you're all looking at the other pictures, okay? This is the tailbone. Now, you may know that as an embryo, when the embryo is developing, that's the head of the embryo, there is a post-anal tail. That means the anus is here and the tail extends past the anus. It's one of the chordate features or vertebrate features. All right, post-anal tail. In humans, that tail normally is resorbed or disappears. There are babies every year that are born with tails. All right, so you could look into that more if you want. So it would be some kind of genetic defect, some kind of mutation. Cats have tails, dogs have tails, horses have tails. They're all mammalia. Humans don't have tails, but humans have a tailbone. All right. Why would we have a tailbone? Because cats and dogs and horses and humans share genetic material, similar genetic material, and we have part of the code to create a tail. But it's not used by us, and so it doesn't persist. The only way that it would make sense is if our genetic material and their genetic material was similar, and therefore we developed similar structures. Well, how could that be? How could we have similar genetic material? We're related through evolution. Okay? Okay. Let us go on. Okay, actually, I gotta stop the camera for a second. Another thing that's interesting. You know when your hair stands on end? You know, we talk about like, you know, it's a horror movie and my hair stood on end. I was so frightened. Or I used to hear when I was a kid, someone walked over my grave. You know, when you get goosebumps. Okay. So those goosebumps are basically caused by, there's your skin, right? And here is, actually, sorry about that. I'll get rid of that in PowerPoint. Let me write in my other thing. There's your skin, there's the hair, and there are muscles. There's a muscle that would pull that hair upright. Well, as human beings, we are often called the naked ape. We are apes. Essentially, we are apes. And we are considered naked apes because apes are very hairy. They have a lot of hair. Look at us. I mean, I know my hair is kind of out of control here, but we don't have very much hair on our body, so we're considered the naked ape. Now, there's definite human reasons why that is beneficial to us, but we still can get goosebumps. Now, my dogs, when they get scared or angry, their hair sticks up, all right, especially along the back. You know that expression, don't get your back up, right? It's like a violence thing, an aggressive thing. And it makes the organism look bigger or shows, it's a sign stimulus. It shows to other organisms to beware that a fight could ensue. So when we have our hair stand on end, it doesn't really serve a purpose. It can also, in addition to making an organism look bigger, it can trap in heat. So, I mean, if you have a lot of hair standing on end, this tends to act as sort of an insulating cover, and it traps in heat. We don't have enough hair, otherwise, the Gap would be out of business. They wouldn't sell winter coats. We don't have enough hair to do anything with it. If my hair on my arm stands upright, no one's going to get to be more intimidated by the silly tattoos than that. This is called a vestigial structure. We haven't lost the genetic programming yet to get rid of that. It doesn't serve any purpose for us, but we still have it. Why would we have it? Because it was part of our genetic makeup that we've inherited over time from Moses and Jesus and Buddha and Bush and all those people, right? Out from your parents to you, all right? Another one. Here's another sort of genetic thing that's a little bit weird maybe to consider, but we are class Mammalia, right? We are mammals. One of the major characteristics of mammals is mammary glands, and they're highly developed in females in order to produce milk for the young. But have you ever noticed, if you're a guy, that you also have nipples, right? Same number of them as a female would have. Why? I mean, when was the last time you breastfed a baby? The reason you have them, and so does the girl have them, is because they're part of your genetic makeup. You're related genetically. Males and females are closely related. All right? And so what I'm getting at is just, again, our genetic relationship, relatedness gives us similar but sometimes modified structure. We could talk about the appendix, in your abdomen, close to your other side, your large intestine, your colon, all right? No real function in us. We still have it. It's a vestigial structure. Okay. So that's the concept of vestigial structures. Again, suggesting evolution, change over time, and genetic relationships. Okay, better hurry up. This is going for a little while here. Oh, fossils. Oh, boy. This is usually the first one when people think about evolution. Oh, we got the fossils, all right? Okay, so here's the thing. Questions about fossils. Studies of strata. The word strata refers to the layering of the Earth's rocks. All right, we've all seen this in geography class. Now, if you look down here at this cliff, right, see, there are layers of rocks, and every year archaeology students are out studying them. There's no mystery. There's no mystique. It's not being made up. It's the true thing. There are fossils in the layers. And the thing about the fossils is the simple ones are near the bottom, the complicated ones are near the top, and then the intermediate ones go like that. So what I'm saying is, you look way down here and you're going to find bacteria, simple things. You look up here and you're going to find a dog or a human. You don't find the dog down here, all right? Why? If everything was created at the same time in the same place, you should have dinosaurs, Fred Flintstone, humans, archaebacteria, stromatoliths, everything, all in the same layers, and every layer. Okay, fine, it went extinct, so it's no longer there. But that kind of thing. This is a key piece of evidence for evolution. It's the one that many people come back to. The other cool thing about fossils is that there are techniques used to date the rocks. So you can figure out how old the rock is by many different techniques, all right? And if you know how old the rock is, then the organism buried in that rock, you can figure out its approximate age, when it died, when it was buried. Now, you're not going to figure it out to the day or anything, but nobody cares about that. All right. So, for example, millions of years ago, 2 million years ago, you probably can't see this, but that is a skull of probably an Australopithecine or some kind of early hominid. This is another hominid-like, or sort of early human kind of thing. Various skulls, there's a trilobite in, was that, bacteria or something like that. What we're saying is that you can figure out when these organisms lived, and you don't find this organism in the same level as this organism, and vice versa. All right, so this can give you the chronology of evolution. All right, this particular one is a very famous one. This is considered to be one of the first sort of birds, or at the crossing point of birds and reptiles, called Archaeopteryx. It had characteristics of birds and characteristics of reptiles. All right, so you'll learn more about that in university if you go on and do that. So the arrangement of the layers and fossils suggests that different organisms had lived at different times. Well, that goes directly against what we said earlier, that organisms were all created at the same time. And simpler organisms were found in the lower or the older strata, with the more complex organisms near the upper layer. So, I don't know what to tell you. I think it's, at this point, there's no more argument about this. It's the way it is. This is how it is. That doesn't mean that science has all the answers. It doesn't have to. That's the thing about science. You have to realize science changes. Science is fluid. As we learn more, as we figure more things out, we find out, you know what, this idea was wrong, let's fix it. But science wants to grow. It wants to shed light on the truth. It's not trying to dupe or suck in anybody or make it believe in this or behave in society. Although all those things are fine. Science is just like, look, turn the microscope on and see what it is. That's what it is. Whether you like it or not, that's what it is. And all of these little pieces are starting to create a pretty convincing puzzle that organisms were not created all at the same time. How could they have been? And that organisms are related, and that's evolution. But wait, you'll see what evolution really is soon. It's not necessarily a dinosaur becoming a human. That's not really what evolution is, although that can happen. Well, maybe not exactly in that order. All right, let's see if I got anything else on here. Good stuff, right? Oh, that's all I've got. Okay, so hopefully you got all that information down with the worksheet, and hopefully you find this interesting. This is not all the evidence for evolution. This is not even the most convincing. The most convincing evidence for evolution has come recently, more recently anyhow, with biochemistry, with biotechnology, with genetic research, genetic engineering. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Maury Show. It's like the talk show where he gets people on there and somebody's upset that they had a baby, and the father is saying, you know, I'm not the father, you know, this is crazy, this girl's crazy, I didn't make that baby. And Maury has a DNA test done on him and on the baby. And he brings the guy out, sits the guy down beside the girl, and they're fighting away and stuff like that. And he's saying, I'm not the father. And Maury has the folder there with the results. And he says, I haven't seen this yet. And he opens it up and he says, you are the father. And then they freak out and they fight and all that. It makes for good TV, right? But I mean, that is the genetic information that proves that he is the father. How do they know that? Because of similar or identical genetic material. If we believe that you can tell that somebody is the father of a child based on DNA, you have to believe when you look at the DNA of a chimpanzee and a human, and you find out they are extremely similar DNA, you have to believe that you are related to that chimpanzee. All right. In fact, scientists are now saying that humans are more related to some apes than some apes are to each other, that we are apes. Okay, just very successful apes. And if you believe that we are related to chimpanzees, then it goes on and on and on, all the way down. Porifera, sponges, Echinodermatous, starfish. Compare the starfish DNA and you. And you find out, you know what, there's not that much difference. We are related to them through evolution. So, how does evolution occur? What is evolution? Well, we're going to have to turn to Charles Darwin for that. We're going to talk about natural selection, survival of the fittest. And when I say that, I don't mean Arnold Schwarzenegger fitness, you know, the strongest, the fastest. It could be survival of the shortest. Imagine a scenario in a particular environment where big, strong organisms are actually at a disadvantage at some point. because of a change in the environment and a storm and an earthquake and all that. And the little ones, the mutant dwarfs, all right, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, were able to hide better and get away from predators or just survive. It can happen by accident, all right? You could have a very well, strong, fit, adapted group of organisms and you'd say they're going to survive. Look at the dinosaurs, all right, and gone. These adapted ones are going to survive. They're so perfectly adapted. And something changes in the environment, and a whole other group is now better able to survive than that first group. You wouldn't have expected it. So it's not like some set pattern that somebody made up in their smoking room with their buddies saying, hey, let's dupe the world into believing in evolution, because we're against religion or something. We'll just say a bunch of this stuff. We are talking about brilliant scientists. Most of the scientists in the world believe in evolution. All of the biology textbooks you will ever encounter, unless you get a very different slant, are built on evolution. Look at your textbook. Notice how it goes. Bacteria, protista, fungi, plantae, animalia. All right? So there is lots more to talk about. Upright walking, the position of the hole in the bottom of the skull, the foramen magnum. We talked about as primates the way the orbits of our eyes project forward for binocular vision, how those orbits have changed over time to create the kind of primate that you and I are. There is lots more to this, so don't let people just suck you in and say stuff like, oh, there's no evidence, or there's not enough evidence, or they found Noah's Ark on the whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, okay? Have you seen Noah's Ark? You ever been there? Would it change anything? So, anyways, my purpose here is not to insult anybody or not to offend anybody. You shouldn't be insulted. You shouldn't be offended. Don't let yourself be. Don't be weak like that. Stand up for what you believe in, but make sure that what you believe in, you know what you're talking about, or don't talk about it. Hear the other side. Let it sink in and don't let it bother you. Don't let it shake your confidence. Or if it does, if it shakes your faith, let your faith wobble around a little bit and see how you feel about that. You might become a stronger Christian or Muslim or Jew or whatever it is you might be, or atheist. That's fine. That's all a part of growth. You cannot hide away from other people's points of view. And you also can't go around spouting some doctrine that was created 5,000 or 6,000 years ago that has very little connection to you, as if you've been there, as if you've lived that. Go live that by all means. Believe in what you want, but see the other side a little bit. You might be surprised. It might not be so bad after all. I don't know. What do I know? Just a high school science teacher. Okay, take care.